Hello, I'm Dr. Jared Jones, and this is part 3 of Foundations of Buddhist Meditation. Today we're going to be talking about walking meditation, which, at least in the way that I've laid out the different techniques of meditation, is going to be the third module. And among the modules we've done so far, this is definitely going to be the shortest to explain, but it's at least as difficult, if not more difficult, to do than the previous module. So, without further ado, walking meditation. Walking meditation is found, I think, in every major Buddhist denomination. I have learned walking meditation in both a Thai forest-inspired or Goenka inspired tradition, and I've also learned it quite more extensively in the Zen tradition. And in the Zen tradition, it's called kinhin. And so, I suppose I should also mention that I've trained in internal martial arts for quite some time, and so I've also learned a great deal of meditation more or less coming out of China, related to training in the internal martial arts. So, these instructions will primarily be based upon the instructions I've received related to Zen style walking meditation. Also, some of my own insights from doing walking meditation, and also a bit of my insights from training in the internal martial arts. So, walking meditation, kinhin. So, what is just to remind you again, we are looking at meditative competencies or cognitive skills. So, each of the foundations that we've covered so far is meant to not necessarily take you all the way to enlightenment, but to use the various techniques that are on offer in various meditation schools to give you a set of cognitive skills you can use to actually change what your mind is like, right? So, using those skills, I'm very confident you could go to any school of Buddhist training, and probably any school of Taoist training, and probably also many schools of Jain or Hindu or Western mysticism, etc., and apply these skills to whatever you found there, and take them as far as you'd like, and probably to the end of all of those training systems if you had the time and inclination. However, what we're training to do, again, is to build up certain types of cognitive skills that you can then use to actually do stuff with your mind, which is actually the point of Buddhist practice, okay? Yeah, much more could be said, but I want to keep it on topic today. So, what is the cognitive skill? The primary cognitive skill is keeping your mental attention inside your body and highly aware of what's happening as you're doing a basic physical movement. Now, once again, this sounds very simple, but I'm hoping that most of you, when you actually try this, will find that it's very hard. If you don't find it hard, either you've done a lot of physical training in the past or you're not doing it properly. It shouldn't be easy. This isn't something we do naturally. Normally what we do is we set out for a walk, and we're talking on our phone, or we're talking to somebody, or we're looking around, and our attention, again, to use the sort of magnifying glass analogy, is sort of like it's sort of like a light bulb, and the light is shining everywhere. And if you want to focus that light on one point, you have to pool the light, bend the light into one point. Now, obviously, if you're walking, even if you're walking back and forth in a small space, you can't put all your attention on the physical body, or you're going to run into something or fall over. But what you can do is put, let's say, 80-20. You can put most of your mental attention into the body and be highly aware of what's happening without becoming so absorbed in what the body is doing that the other senses turn off completely, which is possible. It is possible to make your other four senses become dormant or become so reduced in their activity that you don't know what's happening there for a period of time. But we don't want to press the attention that hard. We want to press it about 80%. So you're still aware of the other senses, but most of your attention is on the body. Okay? So that is the cognitive skill we're building. So previously, what did we do? You gained the cognitive skill of being able to put your mind in one place and keep it there, right? That was foundation one. Foundation two, you built up really two skills, and those are on two different ends of the meditation spectrum in terms of concentration. The first skill is being able to place your mind pretty rapidly on different objects on purpose and keep it there for a short period of time. So now your attention is moving, right? You're still highly concentrated, but your attention is, the target is moving, let's say. And then having done that, you also learn how to take the magnifying glass away, right? It's almost like you were looking at various parts with a magnifying glass. Then you learn how to take the magnifying glass away and just let the mind be open. If you got this far, just let the mind be open and simply observe a large area, either like your whole arm, your whole leg, your whole torso, your whole body, however far you made it. So in theory, before doing this portion, you've already gained those skills. You can place your mind where you want it. You can keep it there. You can sort of zoom out and simply observe. You can zoom in and observe, right? So you should have a fairly sophisticated instrument at this point. So what are we doing with walking meditation? We're basically applying all of the skills that you gained while standing still now to something that is moving. So now not only will your attention be moving, but the thing you have your attention on will also be moving. So you can see how this is all at the same time quite simple and very difficult. If you've prepared quite well the last 3 months, then it shouldn't take too long to gain some skill in this. But this is definitely something that has layers and something that you can really do for the rest of your life and continue building additional skills onto it that can be very sophisticated, especially if you start talking about some of the more advanced techniques available in Tibetan systems and so forth, and Zen. So, okay, let's carry on. So, as I mentioned, I have trained in some Qigong, Tai Chi, Neigong, some Taoist meditation, etc. And those have various types of cultivation methods you can work into your walking practice, but that's not going to be what we're doing with this practice today. So if you have those questions, I would ask that, lots of classes and online courses and things related to that. It's very beneficial. I do it myself, but that's not what we're going to be covering today. What is the prerequisite? Once again, foundation one. Can you put your mind in one place and keep it there for at least, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, right? If you can do that, then you're probably going to be fine doing this practice. Can you then, once you can keep it somewhere, can you move it, right? Can you move it to several areas without the mind getting totally distracted? And can you zoom out and simply observe a large area without the mind just running off and getting distracted? If you can do that, well, now you can move the body and apply the skill of either scanning or holding the attention open on a moving object, right? So now hopefully you can see my promise with this course was I'm going to teach you how to take meditation skills off the cushion and into your life. We started sitting down, then we were standing, and now we're going to be walking in a small space, at least at the beginning. You'll just be walking back and forth. Now, you have learned and will continue to learn how to expand upon and build these cognitive skills of meditation so that you can bring more and more and more of your activities off the cushion and into real life. And really, walking meditation is the bridge, in my view, where you learn in a very direct, very obvious way how to begin taking all these skills into everything else you're doing. Now, I will say this. One of my teachers said, meditation training is not actually about learning how to become um, like an old lady living in the woods with all the creatures, or like some old guy living in the mountains with the big beard and that like can't talk to anybody because they're so weird, right? If that's what's happening to you, then you're deviating off the path. This is about contacting the ultimate ordinary condition, which is incredibly profound. We've just never looked at it very closely, according to most Asian systems of mental training. What we're talking about is accessing the profound ordinary condition. So when you meet highly accomplished meditators, what you're usually blown away by, in my experience, is not that they're like levitating off their cushion. It is that they seem more ordinary than ordinary. They seem super ordinary. This is something that should simply make you more comfortable with the absolutely mundane, with scrubbing the toilet, with having a conversation with your boss, with having a nice meal somewhere, buying a Christmas gift, whatever it is. This is not about having insane experiences and running away for 3 or 4 days at a time and not knowing what to do with yourself. If that's happening to you, you're deviating from the path. Okay? This is about bringing your full awareness into what is actually happening in front of you. And for most of you, if you've never really done that to a profound level, and I don't mean this as some kind of insult, obviously, but what these systems of mental training are saying is that how things are when you look really closely is so profoundly different than you expected when you weren't looking closely that it's shocking and life-changing. When people have near-death experience and when they have, they find out they have cancer or that they have a heart disease and they're going to have a surgery and they might not survive. I've had people close to me have said this to me, and you can read stuff on it, and maybe some of you have had this experience yourself. But all of a sudden, they say, I wake up in the morning now and I drink my coffee, and it's the same cheap stuff I've been drinking for years, but it's the most beautiful cup of coffee I've ever had. And I look out my window, and the colors are vibrant. And I put on music, and the music is incredible. And when I talk to people, I really talk to them, and I really listen, Now, usually, if they recover, all that goes away because they don't know what mental skills they brought to reality that made it like that. Because ordinary reality, if you can contact it, and again, I'm not perfect. I go up and down. I have better days and worse days, better months and worse months, sometimes better years and worse years. But if you gain these skills more and more, sort of in an up and down pattern, but more and more, you'll find that those are the kinds of experiences you have, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. One of my teachers used to say quite often, it's an expression from Charleston, South Carolina, which is one of the cultural capitals of the American South. They say, I don't need to go anywhere because I'm already here. And it's true. That's what meditation training, when you do it properly, creates. It shouldn't turn you into a weirdo. And I bring that up at this specific point because as you start to take this skill into your life, you're not going to be very good at it at first, and you will look weird doing it. So as you start taking it into your other activities, as you start to use it when you're walking around, make a conscious effort to not look like a weirdo, right? Make a conscious effort to continue to be natural and normal and fully engaged in your actions and your reactions and everything else when you're talking and interacting with people. Okay, disclaimer finished. Let's get into the actual practice. So what are the instructions? So very, very, very simple. Again, simple to explain, difficult to do. You're just going to pick an area of your home and an area that is private, preferably not very much visual stimulation, preferably not an area that has a lot of loud noises or especially sudden loud noises if you can avoid it. Um, this should be somewhere that you basically have privacy and people aren't going to barge in, or you can stop them from barging in by locking the door or whatever, so that you can simply focus on what you're doing for a few minutes. And in the same way that you've now built up some tolerance, let's say, to be able to sit down for 5 minutes and put your mind on the breath, or to stand for 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe some of you 30 minutes, whatever, and simply stand. In the same way you've built up that stamina, you're now going to apply it to walking. And you're just simply going to walk back and forth. You get to one side, you turn. I don't care how you turn. You can move your feet however you want. The point is that you're keeping your mind inside the body while you're doing this. And you can keep the mind inside the body using a number of techniques. I've put these in levels, but these are not strictly speaking sequential. You could do these in any order. I just think this is a natural order to do them in for reasons that I hope will make sense. So the first technique is, once again, you're walking back and forth in an enclosed, private, non-stimulating space, right? And while you're walking back and forth, start with just scanning your legs. So you do the body scanning of your legs while you're walking back and forth. And you have that same, you probably won't get as much, how to say, resolution, right? You won't be able to zoom into the level of detail you did when you were standing still, because now you're moving and your mind is engaged with more than simply observing. But you still put the mind into the feet, the ankles, the calves, the knees, the upper thighs, the lower thighs, the upper thighs, the buttocks, the hips. And since you just started walking and your upper body won't be doing as much, I would recommend just doing the scan on your legs for a little while, which is why I put this as at level 1. Now that your legs are going to be doing something, just scan the legs and observe. Don't comment upon or analyze, etc. Same way you did with standing practice. Simply mentally observe what is actually occurring without mentally labeling, analyzing, blah, blah, blah. You're just observing mentally without mentally commenting. Now, once you've done that for a little while, I put etc. here, because you are more than welcome to then do the full body scan and do the torso, the arms, the legs, the head, etc. as you walk, and do the whole body. But I do recommend just starting out with ankles, calves, legs, etc. Start with, I should probably put feet here to begin, shouldn't I? So just start with that. So that is sort of the entry level, right? Second, this technique, I actually, ironically, I started doing this on my own because I couldn't do what one of my teachers was asking me to do. One of my teachers wanted me to simply fill the whole body with my awareness, and I couldn't do it. It was too large an area. And so I started just focusing on my hands, my feet, and my head, so that I had, the points that were furthest away, basically like toes and feet and heels, and the hands and the tips of the fingers and the top of the head. And I just tried to keep my attention on those 5 points. And as I did that, slowly my attention was able to fill in more and more of the body. And then many years later, I don't know, 8 or 9 years later, I encountered a gentleman who has been training me in Taoism for the last 4 years, Taoist practices, and for totally random, but also quite interesting. That turned out to be one of the techniques that Taoists have used for centuries to help people train in walking meditation. So now I have my own sort of backing on it, and I have who knows, a couple hundred years of Taoist meditators saying the same thing. So this is a wonderful technique. Probably before you try to open the entire tactile sense gate while walking, just try to get the mind into the hands, the feet, and the top of the head. If you can do that, then, and you can do that for, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, while you walk back and forth, well, okay. If you can do that, then slowly the mind will sort of connect the dots and fill in the rest, or begin to fill in the rest, or it will be easier to fill in the rest. Which then brings us to level 3, right? Whole body attention, whole body attention. Opening the tactile sense gate, right? In the same way, if some of you did this with standing practice already, fair enough, good, wonderful. Now you need to learn how to take that cognitive skill that you gained while standing still and bring it into moving around, because most of your life you're going to be moving around. So if you can only do it when you're standing still, it's useful, but it's not as useful as being able to do it while moving. So level 3, now you're going to open the tactile sense gate. Do not let your mind zoom in or sort of use the magnifying glass as we were before. Instead, you just take the magnifying glass away and you just let the awareness fill the entire body, everything you can feel. You don't have to feel everything, but everything you can currently feel, you simply let the mind extend into everything. Try not to zoom in anywhere and just observe the whole tactile field. Now, this should remind you of Foundation 1. Foundation 1, you put your attention on a tiny patch of skin inside your nose, right? You put it on just a tiny patch of skin and you held it there and you just observed. Now you're going to zoom out, and the entirety of your body is now the object of concentration. From the tips of your fingers to the tips of your toes to the tops of your head, your whole body is the object of concentration. Everything that occurs in the tactile field of awareness is what you are simply holding the mind on or resting the mind on. Okay? And once again, if you press the mind too hard to do this, then the eyes will become blurry and sort of gray, and the ears will become sort of less receptive and so forth, and you'll bump into things. And so don't press the mind so hard. This is more about sort of, it's difficult to describe the quality of it unless you've done it, but once you do it, this will make sense, that there's an element of sort of relaxing the mind or letting it go, but not relaxing and letting it go so that it can run around everywhere, but simply, once again, normally we have a magnifying glass of attention, okay? Normally, our mind is looking through the magnifying glass like this and zooming in on things all the time, right? It sort of pinpoints, boom, 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 boom. We took control of that by scanning. We made it deliberate. Now I know where my attention is going. I'm putting my attention somewhere. I'm keeping it there for a while. Foundation 2. Now, with opening the tactile sense gate and the final level of walking meditation, you're simply taking the magnifying glass away and letting the awareness open and suffuse, soak into the entire body as you walk back and forth. That is, in terms of training the mental skill that I associate with what I am calling Foundation 3, that is, I think, the final level of walking meditation training for Foundation 3. Now, there is also another note here, and hopefully it is not covered up by my image. No, it's not. Good. The final note is this, okay? If you're doing walking meditation more generally, then walking meditation, especially in the Zen tradition, actually is an extension of what's called just sitting practice, shikantaza, or shikantaza, zazen, right? So the practice of just sitting is one in which you open the tactile sense gate, the auditory sense gate, the visual sense gate, the olfactory or nose sense gate, the gustatory or tongue sense gate, and then also consciousness, the awareness of your own mind. So there are six. You open all six simultaneously, and then you simply rest it there without changing anything. So just sitting, very demanding practice, very demanding. In order to train in walking meditation as an extension of your just sitting practice, you will need, I think, in my humble opinion, to really thrive in that practice, you're going to need foundation 4, which is opening the sense gates. So we can circle back to this module. We can circle back to foundation 3 after we do foundation 4, which would be in a month or so, maybe a bit longer, maybe a bit shorter. And here's how I would recommend doing that. Once you can open the tactile sense gate, the next one, since you're moving around and you don't want to bump into things, the next one that you open is your visual sense gate. We are visual creatures as human beings. Vision is our primary sense by far. So once you've opened the tactile sense gate, then the second one you open as you're trying to develop the skill of having all 6 sense gates open is visual. So you open the body, and then you open the visual field, and then you open the auditory field, because that's our third most dominant sense, or well, really our second most dominant sense, maybe right up there with the body. Once you have the vision, the sound, and the body open, then you add on taste and smell. You can add them on at the same time because they're very closely related, or you can do them one at a time. Either is fine by me. There's no right or wrong answer. And then finally, once all 5 of those are open, then you allow the awareness of your own mental condition to also open, so that you're aware of all of your mental contents, because there will be thoughts and emotions and other things occurring in the mind. You don't try to stop them. You simply become aware of them in the same way that you're aware of your skin and what's happening in your auditory field and everything else. And this is one of the features that makes Zen practice so unique. They have a very similar practice, though, in Taoist training called Zhuang, sitting and forgetting. And they have a very similar practice, at least in the beginning, very similar practice in Tibetan practices as well. I'm not going to tell you the names of those, because then you'll go look them up and you'll get very distracted by all the terms and cool things that they do with them. But there are at least 2 schools of Tibetan meditation that are, in terms of much of what they're trying to do, virtually identical to what Zen is trying to do and what Taoism is trying to do with this same practice. All of them have this very, very similar goals, which is ultimately not simply to give you a cognitive skill, but to show you what your consciousness is actually like. Remember, I said we're trying to access the ordinary. Part of the ordinary is your own consciousness. What is your mind? What does it do? What role does it play in your reality, right? So the foundation 4 will begin to go into that sort of information. When we get into foundation 4, you can personally circle back and begin applying what you learn in foundation 4 to walking meditation. You can apply it to your standing meditation. You can apply it to your seated practice. And if you do some kind of Zen meditation already, you can apply it to your Zen practice. Okay? But for the sake of walking meditation, I would focus in the beginning, especially focus on these 3 levels. It'll be much easier. And I think, humbly, that you'll make more progress if you sort of take bite-sized pieces instead of trying to jump to the end. Everybody wants to do the cool stuff. But the cool stuff happens when you have all the other basic skills in place. And this has been my frustration for years with a number of Buddhist training courses and meditation training courses, they don't actually teach you the skills you need to make some kind of real progress. But that's what I'm trying to do here with you guys. So just to recap one final time, in Foundation 1, you learned how to place your attention somewhere and keep it there. And where did we place it? Somewhere inside the body, which was a small patch of skin inside your nose. Second, you learned how to stand still, but you're in a standing position, and you learn how to place the mind in a number of places, like moving a magnifying glass and looking at more physical stuff, keeping the mind once again inside the body. As you escalated that practice, some of you hopefully got this far, but if you didn't, that's okay. Some of you then took the magnifying glass away and simply zoomed out and observed big portions of the body or the whole body at the same time. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go through that same process, exactly the same, very, very similar process, rather, while you're walking. Level 1, you're going to walk while scanning mostly in the beginning your legs, and then you can do your whole body. Then you're going to put your attention on your hands and your feet, all the way to the fingertips, all the way to the toe tips, and the very top of the head. And you're going to try to keep those 5 points without losing any of those 5 points. Keep your awareness of those 5 points as you do the practice for, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever you like. Finally, third level, either this will happen on its own. It may just happen that your mind starts to fill in the gaps between the hands and the feet and the head, and suddenly you become aware of the whole body. If that happens, then just zoom out and be aware of the whole body and hold your awareness on the whole body. Level 3 is you zoom out and you rest the mind or hold the mind on the whole of the physical unit, the whole of the physical sensation, without mentally adjusting anything or analyzing anything, etc. And that's the hardest part. The hardest part is not just getting your mind to observe it. The hardest part is to not mentally comment on it and not mentally divide it up and not try to figure out what's happening by analyzing it, etc. The hardest part is simply just holding it, the awareness there, without adjusting anything. So that, at least in terms of the way that I'm training these skills up and building these skills up for the purposes of this course, that is what I'm calling level 3 of walking meditation. But again, we could give it any name you like. I think it's better to call it something so we can all talk about it. Then finally, eventually, we will cover in Foundation 4 the way to open up all the other sense gates besides the tactile sense gate. And as we learn to open up each of those sense gates throughout the course of Foundation 4, you can then build them or reverse engineer them back into your seated practice, standing practice, and walking practice. And I'll say this now because I know this question will come up. You are more than welcome to mix and match and do this however you'd like. If you want to sit down and do 5 minutes of focusing on the breath, fantastic. If you'd like to, if you'd like to do standing practice tomorrow instead of walking, no problem. Do that. The key is, as much as you can, try to just maintain some consistent habit. And as far as I'm concerned, if you have a couple good weeks where you're practicing a lot, and then you have a week where you do very little or you do nothing, no problem. Just get back to it at some point. So that's the sort of give and take, especially in the beginning. But even after years of doing this, you'll find sometimes when there's too much stress at work or too much stress in your marriage or whatever, that you just don't end up doing as much, and that's fine. As long as somewhere in your heart, somewhere in your being, you're like, I want to do this, I'm going to get back to this. That's fine. That's fine. And when you get back to it, just get back to it. Don't be guilty. Don't be weird about it. This isn't a Catholic thing. Just get back to it as you can. As we get past the 5 foundations, for those who are interested, I'm also going to talk about various lifestyle skills, habits, ways of organizing your time that'll make it easier to keep up the habit of meditating and training and studying, as if you're interested in that. But again, you don't have to be too strict with yourself. If you miss a couple of days, when you get back to it, it's not like you're starting over or something. But there is a certain benefit, especially for, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever at a time, of not missing any sessions. You sort of build up more of a feeling for the practice. So, put in some heart. Do it as best you can. And if you start to get that feeling where you're like, I really want to, today, for some reason, I just want to do 4 sessions, then do it. No one's stopping you. Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in. And I will be available in the group chat for those of you who are in the group chat for questions. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.